This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Canada's new Prime Minister, Liberal leader Mark Carney, and his cabinet are sworn in at a ceremony in Ottawa. Toll-free, what to expect crossing the Halifax Harbour bridges once the toll booths come down. And COVID anniversary. 5 years after the pandemic struck, what lessons have been learned?
The weekend is here, and it is going to be a mild one with temperatures into the double digits, even some teens. Your full forecast is coming up.
It's a changing of the guard in Ottawa. Newly minted Liberal leader Mark Carney has been sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister, along with a new cabinet at Rideau Hall, closing the book on almost a decade of Justin Trudeau.
I, Mark Carney, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Carney is taking the oath of office less than a week after winning the Liberal leadership. The new Prime Minister and former central banker quickly put his stamp on government, appointing a leaner, reworked 24-seat cabinet to Trudeau's previous 37. Carney and his new cabinet face immediate challenges, steering a country locked in a trade war with the U.S., all while barreling towards a federal election that could be days or weeks away. Included in Carney's cabinet is Nova Scotia MP Cody Blois. The MP for Kings Hants is Canada's new Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food and Rural Economic Development. Blois replaces Darren Fisher as Nova Scotia's voice at the Liberal cabinet table. Well, Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston was a guest on Fox Business Network Thursday to talk tariffs. Houston's office says they pitched the interview to Fox. They wanted the Premier to be able to speak directly to Americans. During the interview, Houston talked about the importance of U.S.-Canada's relationship, and he also said Canada feels betrayed by tariffs.
It's just a situation like we value the relationship with the Americans. We're good customers back and forth. These are really important relationships, along with a lot of family ties too, and not only commercial ties. So, you know, all the talk about 51st State and just the fact that they put tariffs on Canada, it feels like our best friend punched us in the nose.
Houston is in New York and Boston to discuss trade and the impact of the tariffs. Seafood, rubber, and minerals are some of Nova Scotia's top exports to the U.S. Well, sentencing has begun for the girl who admitted taking part in the killing of Ahmed al-Marak in April of last year. The girl was just 14 when she and 3 boys attacked al-Marak in a parking garage at the Halifax shopping center. He was stabbed and died later in hospital. All 4 accused were charged with second-degree murder. The girl eventually pleaded guilty to manslaughter. There is a publication ban on details surrounding the psych assessments that have been done on the girl. Her sentencing will continue later this month. Well, if you take the Halifax Harbour bridges, your commute is about to change. Starting Monday morning, both the McKay and Macdonald bridges will be toll-free. As work to bring down the toll plazas continue, there are a lot of questions about how it will all work for drivers. Our Josh Hoffman explains.
Tolls for Halifax's 2 bridges are coming to an end, and things are going to look a lot different for some commuters. The physical toll booths at the Macdonald Bridge, or what the Bridge Commission calls the toll plaza, are coming down, allowing traffic to flow more freely in open lanes. Traffic lights at the nearby intersection will direct motorists to the 2 lanes heading onto the bridge and from the 4 lanes coming off it. The bus lanes in both directions will stay the same. The goal is to have it look and operate like any other road so that it will be intuitive for drivers. This entire structure and the toll booths will be removed by March 17th, but crews will need another weekend to completely finish the job, so motorists can expect to see temporary signage and markings. There will be an open area between the eastbound and westbound lanes where the tolls are now that will at first be used for work crews, but will eventually be turned into a green space. Over at the McKay Bridge, motorists won't have to pay a toll either, but work to remove these toll booths won't start until the end of March. That's because the plaza here is made out of concrete and it's interconnected, so it's going to take a much more extensive effort, and cranes will actually be brought in to help dismantle it. Until then, motorists in each direction will be pushed to the outside lanes, still passing through the tolls, but just not paying. Also, the on-ramp coming from Princess Margaret Boulevard onto the McKay will be closed temporarily for safety reasons, but vehicles coming off the bridge will still be able to take that exit. It's a lot of changes.
I'm hoping that people are looking forward to the toll-free experience, but understand that there's going to be some driver hesitations as they see something new. The tolls have been here for 70 years, so people are going to expect to see them here, and when they see something different, they're gonna pause. And so we just want people to, be a little calm, be a little chill.
Even though officials believe it will be an easy transition for motorists, they're urging drivers to slow down while everyone gets used to the changes. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, Dartmouth.
And we're joined by Ryan for a first look at the weather, and it sounds like a pretty nice weekend ahead.
Yeah, very spring-like. Spring doesn't officially arrive, of course, until Thursday, but getting a preview here, no question. As we look at the temperatures on Saturday, we're going to be ranging between about 9 to 13 or 14 degrees in many cases, but the valley, Kentville, back towards Wolfville could hit 15. And again, a little bit cooler in this onshore southerly flow that we're going to be seeing, and fog patches likely lingering around the coastal Tri-County area and the South Shore. Bit cooler in Cape Breton, bit of an onshore east to southeast flow there. Sunday, a bit more cloud in the mix, no doubt, and fog patches a little more dominant down and towards the south and west. The southerly winds on Sunday are going to be gusting 30, 40, 50 kilometers per hour, so it's going to be breezy, but mild breezy. And have a look at these temperatures across northern Nova Scotia, where we'll range between 13 and 16 degrees. Again, a little cloudier, a little cooler down towards the south coast, and we will be looking at a bit of patchy drizzle in there as well. We'll walk you through it with your complete timeline and a look way ahead to spring coming up.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
It has been 5 years since Nova Scotia announced its first cases of COVID-19, and to date, roughly 1,250 Nova Scotians have died from it. Former Premier Stephen McNeil and Chief Medical Officer of Health Dr. Robert Strang reflect on the province's early response to the pandemic and what they might have done differently. The CBC's Richard Woodbury reports.
It seems like a lifetime ago, but also so recent.
As you know, we now have our first 3 presumptive cases of COVID-19 here in Nova Scotia.
5 years ago, after this announcement, it did not take long before restrictions were put in place. Gathering limits were capped, businesses such as gyms and salons were ordered to close, as well as bars. Restaurants were only allowed to offer takeout. People entering the province would have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. But in the early days, some Nova Scotians were not complying with the rules. Tough words from Stephen McNeil on April 3rd, 2020 changed everything.
When all we have to do is stay the blazes home.
McNeil says his chief of staff asked him that day if he would say the words, "Stay the blazes home."
I colorfully said, "No, this is exactly how I would say it." She said, "Well, we can't say it that way." I said, "Yes, I would say something like that. That's exactly what, my mother might have said, get the blazes outdoors." We knew what the phrase was. It was something that Nova Scotians could relate to, but that's where it came from. It was a team effort, and they deserve the credit for it. I just mouthed the words.
It was the kind of blunt, plain messaging that people needed to hear, that this needed to be taken seriously. And sometimes you need that very plain, simple, crisp message that to make people sit up and take notice, and it worked.
Nova Scotia became a global leader for its early handling of the COVID-19 pandemic because of strict rules and buy-in from the public. But would Strang and McNeil do anything differently?
We didn't truly understand the significant long-term impacts on mental health, especially, and disrupting social isolation and social connection. So we'd have to think our way through that next time. Is there a way we could do things a little bit differently to minimize some of those impacts, even though we might have to use those same tools?
Strang says he probably would allow for more outdoor activity because the risk of transmission is much lower outside. He says details like this have been worked into the province's updated pandemic plan, if there's a next time. McNeil says he's thought about the amount of time long-term care homes were locked down.
But put that in the context of what happened at Northwood. Would I change my mind? I don't know. We knew that that's isolation was having an impact on our seniors. How could we best address that? Could we have done that differently? I've thought about that some.
Dr. Strang, this is our 96th briefing since we started this journey 11 months ago. I want to thank you for your support, your guidance, and most of all, your friendship as we found our way through this.
Before March 2020, McNeil says he'd only ever met with Strang once before. The two soon became joined at the hip at their daily press conferences. And even though he's left office, McNeil and Strang keep in touch. The two have become friends. Richard Woodbury, CBC News, Halifax.
Just a reminder. The old Marine House office building in downtown Dartmouth will soon be affordable housing. The federal government has sold the building to the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Society. The organization plans to renovate the building to create at least 61 housing units for urban Indigenous people, and the goal is for rent to be 30% of a person's income. The apartments are expected to be ready for people to move in mid-year 2027. The association that represents the province's more than 2,000 real estate agents and brokers is urging the Houston government not to double the deed transfer tax for out-of-province buyers. The governing PCs say the measure will generate an extra $13 million a year and give Nova Scotians looking for a home a leg up on the competition from elsewhere. But the president of the Nova Scotia Association of Realtors, Suzanne Gravel, says it could also drive away sales.
Well, our concerns is that out-of-province buyers, that they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to start looking elsewhere to purchase their seasonal or retirement homes, pulling that, and that takes revenue away from our province. And for what? It makes no sense to us.
Gravel says the move is also not in keeping with the Houston government's new focus on bringing down interprovincial trade barriers and welcoming new investment to Nova Scotia. The province is ordering Nova Scotia Power to use more biomass to generate electricity for the grid. The Houston government changed the renewable electricity regulations this week to ramp up the requirement for biomass use. Usage was previously 135 gigawatt hours per year and is now 160 gigawatt hours. The province says this will make the electricity grid greener. Biomass used by Nova Scotia Power has to be sustainably harvested, and it has to be a byproduct of forestry practices. There's also been an excess of biomass in Nova Scotia ever since the Northern Pulp Mill shut down 5 years ago. A French nuclear-powered attack submarine is drawing a lot of attention in Halifax Harbour. The Tourville arrived in Halifax this week. The CBC's Hannah Vino explains why it's here.
Behind me is the SSN Tourville, which is a French nuclear attack submarine. The submarine is in Halifax following its first sail across the Atlantic. They are currently trying to verify its military capabilities, which includes doing tests in cold waters.
We have to test the endurance and check if everything is okay for the next military operations. The mission began in the very beginning of January and will end at the middle of April. And we went to the Labrador Sea to test the submarine in very cold water. The crew is composed of 65-70 people. The submarine displacement is 5,200 tons, which is twice more than our old class. The submarine has been constructed to be discreet, so we can detect other submarine without being counter-detected. So we have a big advantage.
We want to improve interoperability. So mostly with the Royal Canadian Air Force, because we are working on anti-submarine warfare, and the submarine will benefit from it. And for the Royal Canadian Navy, it's an opportunity to see what does it mean to have a brand new submarine.
Next is the exercise will proceed with Canadian Navy and Canadian Air Force, because we'll proceed to exercises at the beginning of the next week with winching helicopter procedures and an exercise where the helicopter and maritime patrol aircraft will try to detect the submarine.
We were told that the submarine will be in commission in a few months. Hannah Vino, CBC News, Shearwater.
Still some light out there over Halifax. Ryan is up next with his full weather forecast. We'll see you after the break. All right, so were you up in the middle of the night peeking out the window trying to see the lunar eclipse?
I slept through it.
Yeah,
I slept through it in full knowledge of I knew full well that I would open the inbox today and there would be more than a couple pictures in there with some great snaps, and that's what we did see. By the way, inbox also filling up with some signs of spring. So that's a little preview for our viewer picture of the day at the end of the show. Yeah, have a look at this. This is one shot that we received.
Impressive.
Diane Irwin, yeah, this was right around 4 a.m. when the lunar eclipse was at its fullest. And Diane, of course, at Amherst Shore. And have a look at this from Tracy Wallace in Bedford with a little bit of a time lapse. And yeah, right around 4 a.m. was when it was at its peak. And then, as you can see, even by 4:45, starting to fade away. So thanks to Tracy and Diane and everybody for sending your picks. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. Have a look at the high temperatures today. Boy, did we rebound nicely after that chilly start. Did crack double digits in Greenwood. Kentville at 8 degrees, and those were two of our hotter spots. The Caribou Point Station at 8, Yarmouth at 8 as well. Now, as we look at those temperatures, still 10 degrees actually in Keji as well at this hour. So yeah, still into the mild temperatures. A beautiful Friday evening. We're looking at those winds pretty light in from the south, and that's going to keep temperatures a bit cooler along parts of the coast, and that's going to be the theme for the weekend. No doubt about it. We've got that southerly flow. Temps will be limited as a result of that, given those cool ocean temps. It would be nice if we could just flick the switch, right? When the temperatures arrive, the ocean temperatures could warm at the same time, but not the case, obviously. Helps us in the fall, does not help us, obviously, in the spring and early summer season. And now, this is the warm air that's surging up ahead of this very powerful storm system, which is rolling its way up through the U.S. right now. Look at the temperature contrast. 11 at El Paso, 21 at Oklahoma City, 28 in Houston. Brownsville's at 33. Phoenix is just at 13. Los Angeles at 9. So this gives you a sense of the cold air wrapping in on the other side of the system. A big spring storm indeed. And the cold temps out west as well. For us, looking very spring-like over the next 7 days, but we're not quite done with the cool stuff yet. So let's walk you through it. Temperatures overnight tonight dropping into the -2 to -4 range. Winds are going to be light. We'll see some fog patches developing in through the southwest, especially here. Into tomorrow, Saturday morning, we'll see a mix of sun and cloud generally. Coastal fog here along that Atlantic coastline. They'll really start to creep in late afternoon into the early evening in the southwest and even back into the metro area. Saturday night will be foggier all across the board, but this is going to be the area that's kind of capped with the clouds, a bit more dominant tomorrow. We'll run you through that. Here's Saturday for Cape Breton, east to southeast winds. So coming in off the water here and here and here and here, but inland we'll likely get into the 5, 6, 7 degree range. Inverness, Mabu, back towards Port Hood. Double digits in Antigonish, but coastal areas in Antigonish County and along the North Shore, the winds are likely light enough that we'll see a bit of a coastal breeze even there, but generally 8 to 12, even 13 degrees New Glasgow and 12 degrees down through Truro and Enfield and Windsor. Again, coastal Halifax will be closer to 5 in those onshore winds, but 7, 8, 9 degrees, not too far inland. Again, the South Shore, we'll see the fog patches retreating back to the coastline here in Shelburne and Yarmouth as well. Clouds likely a little bit more dominant here, but inland we're going to see more sun. And a similar story for Sunday, but a stronger southwest wind on Sunday. It's going to be gusting 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. Fog will retreat back to the coast, but likely will be a bit more dominant in coastal communities for Yarmouth and down through Shelburne and Liverpool, Queens County rather. Even into Digby. But look at these temperatures inland, 13 to 16 degrees. Metro, again, right around 9, but likely into the teens, maybe even up towards the airport, looking pretty good in Enfield. Now, as we look at the surge into the Monday time period, things are going to be turning wet. Monday, we've got that warm air continuing, but it is going to turn wet with periods of rain. And just a little heads up here that as we work our way into that long range forecast, we are going to be looking at that cold pool of air sinking back in as we move into next weekend. Very spring-like here, Amy, right through spring, but next weekend, don't get too over-eager with those winter tires just yet.
Okay, good reminder. Calm down. Thanks for that, Ryan.
Thank you.
Coming up, Empowerment for Hope, how this Nova Scotia woman is working to support people experiencing homelessness. Welcome back. Communities across the province are grappling with a lack of affordable housing, and that is certainly the case around Halifax. In Dartmouth, the Green Road homeless encampment is wedged between a cemetery and a public housing complex called Jelly Bean Square, or just the Bean. And this winter, it's where Wendell Brown has been giving people who are experiencing homelessness some hope. We met Wendell yesterday in a documentary by the CBC's Elizabeth Chu. Here is part 2 of Wendell's story.
Okay, wow. We're moving along, honey.
Yep.
We're moving along. Get the moist. I always like doing this because I lived 3 years on the street myself, so I didn't have this. Nobody came and did this stuff for me, and everything that I'm doing by giving back to the community is stuff that I wish was in place for me. So I'm Wendell Brown, and I am the CEO and founder of Empowerment for Hope. My organization supports those who are affected by sex trafficking and gender-based violence, as I am a survivor of sex trafficking. I look at these guys over here at this encampment, and there's many encampments around, but this is close to my heart because I grew up here. When I first think that, it really, really hurt me to see that this is happening because, you know, homelessness, I've been through that myself. So, a little bit about my life's journey. By the time I was 15, I was in love. I was 15 years old and I was in love with this 24-year-old man. He could empathize in his own way. At that time, I didn't realize that he was using my vulnerability against me to lure me into prostitution. Because I fell into drugs, that turned into homelessness. I had a lot of mental health issues. You know, I was homeless for 3 years, from Halifax all the way to Toronto. Here in Halifax, I used to coach surf sometimes. I used to sleep up on the commons, in the bushes, close to the left side of the oval, to be honest. I didn't have a tent. I used to just have a sleeping bag or a blanket and sleep on cardboard in Toronto. It was cold. I used to sleep behind the Eaton Center on top of the heating grate. We were in the bushes at Queen's Park, which was frequented by the LGBT community because it was one place that I could go and I could sleep and I know that nobody would ever touch me because they always looked out for me. Yes, I have survived a lot, you know, but I conquered a lot too. So, and even though I say I'm a survivor, but I'm a conqueror because I've survived so much, but I conquered so much also to be where I am right now. And actually, I'm even sitting in front of you to be where I am, to be able to tell you this.
And you can do the...
Okay, sure, boo. Okay, thank you. That'll work. That'll work, honey.
She decided one day that she just wanted, you know, to just change. She did. Everything's still a process. We're still human. But as you see, she took that and made it into something better for herself and others.
Because there's less men than there are women. So if just from what I was counting when I was here yesterday, it feels good because it's my family. It makes me know that you guys believe in what I'm doing, you know, even when you don't be saying it all the time. But I know you guys do, you know, because I'm totally different than the woman and the mother that I used to be.
Because it does take a strong mind to like overcome addiction and even homelessness and wanting to get out the situation. I've seen her homeless, like I've seen her at this point. So it's just really good. I don't want to get emotional, but yeah, it was nice. I just can't talk right now.
No, he was taking one for a woman.
You're by yourself? Okay.
No, if you got...
No, I'm by myself. Yeah, I got one.
Oh, you got one? Okay.
Okay. They're coming out of the tent over there. You take care of yourself, Catherine.
I'm going to go and let these folks know that...
Yeah, because I told them earlier. Yeah, thank you, PJ. Thank you. I gave out all my blessing bags, which is our first annual community give back through Empowerment for Hope. This was a great success. I'm just happy to put a smile on everybody's face. What's your name?
Greg.
Greg.
Yeah.
I'm Wendell.
Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you too. Give him a blue bag.
This is mint?
Yeah.
A woman's bag?
Here you go, my love.
She
come from here too. She knows exactly what we're going through.
How big is your stove?
She actually turned her life around for the better. That should tell everybody that they can do it too.
There you go, sweetie.
And I believe even when I get housed, I'll be still back here helping as much as I can.
My name is Deandra Francis. I am the sister to Wendell Brown, the CEO of Empowerment for Hope. She is living proof that everybody that's here and in any homeless encampment can come out of what they're in with just a little bit of help.
Yeah, 'cause she wasn't in your life for periods of time.
Yes, and if I'm being honest, there was a time where I didn't even want to hug her. And I'm sad to say that, but I didn't want to hug her because I was like, she's a person that I can't touch. She's on drugs. She's gonna take from me. She's gonna do this. And I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I get it. I get it. I understand.
I'm so sorry.
I understand, sis. I understand. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I love you. I love you, sis. It's all good.
I love you too.
It's all good. Everything I do, it makes me feel good to do this because I didn't have this for myself. Don't get me wrong. You know, I can go to a soup kitchen or a food bank, but I didn't have anybody going around giving me clothing or coming to where I was sleeping at to give me clothing or to give me food. God bless you.
Thank you.
You'll see me again. No matter what I do is always what I wish was in place for myself. God bless.
Really, so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll be back with the food.
Coming up, Canadian sovereignty. The U.S. Secretary of State doubles down on his government's threat to annex Canada. And hard times ahead. Tariff-related layoffs are already hitting steelworkers in some parts of Canada. Welcome back. As we told you earlier, Canada has a new Prime Minister. Mark Carney and a somewhat smaller cabinet have been sworn in at Rideau Hall. And as the CBC's David Thurton reports, Carney is promising action from day one.
Prime Minister Mark Carney arriving at Rideau Hall, ready to usher in a new political era.
That I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Just days after becoming Liberal leader, Carney isn't wasting time filling his cabinet with mostly familiar faces. François-Philippe Champagne is finance minister. Key ministers in the Tariff war, Jonathan Wilkinson and David McGuinty, keep their old jobs along with Melanie Joly away at G7 meetings, while Dominic LeBlanc now focuses on the relationship with the U.S. and premiers.
We have new ministers with new ideas, ready to respond to new threats and to seize new opportunities.
Carney's team is smaller, 24 ministers instead of 37, fewer women than men. Immediately confronting the new cabinet, a trade war and U.S. annexation threats.
We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, be part of the United States. America is not Canada.
After the formalities, it was straight to work.
I have already met with my deputy minister at ISED, and I have instructed him to prepare a letter that will be going to our suppliers to buy Canadian.
It is a privilege to serve in cabinet. Right now, all of us need to be focused on helping our new Prime Minister Carney, lead our country.
On his first day, the new PM did need help.
Sir.
On the way to his first cabinet meeting.
I'm lost. Just pale too. What are your first priorities? First priorities, we're going to deal with the carbon tax.
The Conservative leader cast doubt on that.
This is the carbon tax law. It's in place today. Until Parliament is recalled, this carbon tax law will be the law of the land.
While carbon pricing is still the law of the land, Carney signed an order ending the collection of the consumer levy.
We will be eliminating the Canada fuel charge, the consumer fuel charge, immediately.
It's unlikely that Parliament will be recalled to change the law. Sources say Carney will be triggering an election this month, sending Canadians to the polls either in late April or May. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
At the end of the G7 Foreign Affairs meeting in Quebec, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio doubled down on his government's threat to annex Canada. Speaking on Canadian soil, he said Trump's position reflects a, quote, disagreement with Canada's position. Kate McKenna has the details.
During his visit to Canada, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio defended suggestions from his president to annex Canada. He downplayed the threat to Canadian sovereignty by saying that it's a disagreement between two governments.
The president has made his argument as to why he thinks Canada would be better off joining the United States for economic purposes. There's a disagreement between the president's position and the position of the Canadian government. I don't think that's a mystery coming in, and it wasn't a topic of conversation because that's not what the summit was about.
But annexing Canada is more than a disagreement, according to Canada's foreign minister.
What I said to the secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate, period. There's no argument, there's no conversation about it, there's no need to talk about it. You're here, you respect us, you respect our sovereignty, you're in our country, you respect our people, period.
It's crazy. His point is crazy. That's it. We will never, ever, in any way, shape, or form, be part of the United States. America is not Canada.
Germany and the UK came out in support of Canadian sovereignty.
Your country stands together. Canada's unity inspires us. We Europeans, we Germans, and Canada are not only partners, we are close friends. And friends have each other's back, always.
I recognise that there has been anxiety here in Canada at this time. How could I not with Canadian family? But I'm absolutely clear that Canada will remain and continue to be a proud sovereign nation.
But the Italian foreign minister said standing up for Canada is not his job.
But for me, Canada will be Canada over the next years. This is not the problem between Italy and America, problem between Italy and Canada, but it's not my job.
Despite this, Melanie Joly says it was a good meeting, with foreign ministers unanimously agreeing to support a U.S.-brokered ceasefire proposal in Ukraine. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Lamel Bay, Quebec.
In Europe, outrage is growing over the latest tariff threat issued by U.S. President Donald Trump, a 200% import levy on wine, champagne, and other alcohol exports from EU countries if the European Union goes ahead with a planned tariff on American whiskey. Anna Cunningham has the latest from London.
Europe sends close to $5 billion worth of wine each year to the US. Now, in France, there is pride in their heritage of producing wine and champagne. But this very suggestion from President Donald Trump that he is prepared to hit the EU with a 200% tariff has created anger and disbelief. The French Prime Minister François Bayrou says the US is threatening to obliterate the wine industry and that EU countries will not yield to the threats. President Trump says it would be in retaliation for the bloc's planned levies on American-made whiskey, which are themselves in retaliation for US tariffs on steel and aluminum. There is certainly deep concern in the European wine and liquor industry.
We really want to say to policymakers in the EU and in the US, enough is enough. We're done being used as bargaining chips. We want to get out of these unrelated disputes, and we really, really want to go back to tariff-free transatlantic trade in spirits.
President Trump has made his views on the EU clear.
I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you. And we're going to win that. We're going to win that financial battle.
In France, we know that independent winemakers represent 60% of the country's wine production, but it's not just France that is angry about this. Spain, Italy and Portugal are all big wine exporters. The French Finance Minister, Éric Lombard, has labelled this escalating US-EU trade war as idiotic. He's planning to visit Washington soon, and he says he's hopeful negotiations with the US will be open. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
The onslaught of U.S. tariffs on Canada could spell hard times ahead. It will be felt company by company and community by community. Already hit is a steel facility halfway between Ottawa and Montreal. With that story, here's the CBC's Nicole Williams.
The trade war playing out on the world stage, now a harsh reality for this small community.
We are one of the cleanest steel producers in the world.
Iveco, the industrial pride of Eastern Ontario, announcing layoffs in the wake of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum.
There's a lot of worriness, obviously, on the shop floor, and the people are concerned.
According to the union, a combination of permanent and temporary layoffs will affect 150 workers. That's about 30% of the workforce of the factory in the small village of Lorignal. And people here are well aware this could be just the beginning.
The tariffs change daily with the Trump administration, so it's quite difficult to make plans around that kind of hostility.
It's a serious blow to a community where most people earn a living at the steel plant or have a close connection to someone who does.
They're one of the biggest employers. Iveco also helps the other companies surrounding Iveco, like the providers, the other manufacturers like machine shops, welding shops.
Those deep-rooted connections mean the impacts will be felt beyond the factory walls.
Everything suffers from it. There's a lot of truckers who depend on that place, a lot of restaurants, all that stuff. It's a downward effect.
It's awful because the village is living with that. If there's no Iveco or there's no more work here.
Then there's also the fear that what's happening here may be a sign of what's to come for the rest of the country.
The damage is starting to kick in, and as this moves along, I think we can be certain that unfortunately more damage will be done.
The national union that represents steelworkers says government needs to step in, not only to help those here, but manufacturers across the country. There are 23,000 people employed directly in steel in Canada and 100,000 more in related industries. And so there is a lot at stake if this escalates or drags on. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Lorne-Yell, Ontario.
Some terrifying moments aboard an American Airlines flight that caught fire on the ground at the Denver airport. The plane carrying 172 passengers and 6 crew was flying from Colorado Springs to Dallas-Fort Worth yesterday. Engine problems forced an emergency landing in Denver. The engine burst into flames while taxiing to the gate. Everyone got out alive, but some passengers were trapped for a time on the wing as smoke billowed around them. 12 people were taken to hospital with minor injuries. The FAA is investigating the cause. Well, it was a heist that made international headlines. Now the man accused of stealing one of the world's most famous portraits from Ottawa's Chateau Laurier Hotel is admitting guilt in the crime. The CBC's Paul Hunter has that story.
The mystery of the theft of the Roaring Lion now all but sorted. In this Ottawa courthouse today, said the man accused in one of the most notorious art heists in Canadian history, "I'm guilty, Your Honor."
Mr. Wood, you have anything to say before the hearing? Let's leave Mr. Hunter, but thank you.
Jeffrey Wood said little else publicly today other than signing off in an Ottawa courtroom on an agreed statement of facts on his brazen theft of this. An original print of Yusuf Karsh's 1941 photo of former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, stolen from its place on the walls of the Fairmont Chateau Laurier Hotel in Ottawa more than 3 years ago, replaced on the wall by a fake, which went unnoticed for months until a hotel employee realized what had happened. The theft sparked global headlines and a hunt by Ottawa police spanning 2 continents before its recovery last fall in Italy, having been bought by a collector at auction in the UK. At Woods' hearing today in Ottawa, he pled guilty to 3 charges: theft, forgery, and trafficking stolen goods, with fresh details now coming to light.
This is the evidence?
This is the evidence that was recovered from the scene.
That police found DNA on duct tape attached to the fake Churchill, found to match Woods' DNA found on a toothbrush obtained in a search warrant. The court also heard that Woods likely was planning the heist for months beforehand, and that the path taken by the portrait after it had been stolen likely went from Canada through Mexico and then on to London. How are you feeling, madame?
Very good. Today's the day.
Hotel General Manager Geneviève Dumas was among the witnesses called by the Crown. She told the court she deems the portrait irreplaceable. But Woods' lawyer, Edward Greenspan, suggested to the court when you boil it all down, it's just a print of a photo made from a negative. Woods' lawyer is arguing for a suspended sentence. The Crown wants 2 years less a day in custody. A decision on the sentence is expected in the coming weeks. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Ottawa.
Nearly a dozen bronze memorial plaques are missing from a cemetery in Edmonton. A century ago, the plaques were sent home to families of fallen soldiers after the First World War and placed on grave sites. As Emily Fitzpatrick reports, 11 of them have been stolen.
Empty spaces are all that's left on these graves.
By taking these memorial plaques away, these personal links to the past, we're losing some of our Canadian history, our Canadian heritage.
Regimental historian Joe MacDonald says nearly a dozen memorial plaques honoring fallen Edmonton soldiers have been stolen from family grave sites.
These memorial plaques, what they are, they're symbolizing a lost loved one, whether that be a father, a son, a husband, or a brother. And so these were sent home to families because it was impossible to actually return the human remains at the end of the war. It was either too expensive, or for many of the soldiers, they just went missing.
MacDonald says the plaques may be small, but they're the only link to lost loved ones, many of whom are still buried overseas.
For a century, that memorial plaque, which had once been there, was that connection the mother had to her son's gravesite, a gravesite she probably never saw. And so it's a shame that that had now been stolen. And once again, we just hope that someday it'll be returned.
Military collector Doug Stiles believes those responsible will attempt to sell them rather than melt them down.
I was approached at one of the local flea markets and someone tried to sell me them. As collectors, we always record information. So I had recorded the list of all the plaques in the cemeteries throughout Edmonton. And as soon as I saw the names, I thought I'd better check on it just before I bought them. And it turned out that they had come from Edmonton Cemetery.
Edmonton police are investigating the thefts, and both Stiles and MacDonald hope to see the plaques returned to their rightful places. Emily Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Edmonton.
Canada's main stock index gained 1.5% today, rallying alongside U.S. markets to end an otherwise grim week. Here's a look at the numbers as we head to break. Okay, we're talking during the break. This is the last weekend of winter.
Yeah.
Not going to feel like it, though.
No.
It's not going to. It's going to feel more like the first weekend of spring, and so why not ring it in early? But again, remember that spring has many bumps on the road.
So don't get too
summer,
excited.
lots of potholes. So yes, just definitely temper expectations because we're off to a rip-roaring start here for sure. Have a look at our viewer picture of the day. On that note of spring, we're going to zoom in on Middle Sackville and north of Halifax and have a look at this picture. Crocuses.
Very nice.
This is our first crocus pick. We've had some snowdrop picks, but
Yes.
the first one with crocuses, and I
love the purple.
Dare say that there will be more popping out of the ground this weekend with those types of temps. Thanks to Dennis for sharing Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. Yeah, we will see coastal drizzle and fog in the Tri-County area down towards Queens County as well through Saturday. Inland, though, we're going to be seeing brighter skies, especially towards northern areas where we'll pop into the low to even mid-teens through the valley, eastern areas of the valley in particular. So looking quite lovely indeed. Those onshore winds for Cape Breton keeping temps a bit cooler there as well. A more southwest flow on Sunday, a breezier one as well. We'll gust towards 40 kilometers per hour into the afternoon. Looking at, again, that coastal fog and drizzle, Yarmouth, Shelburne, Queens, edging up towards, the South Shore region. Inland, Bridgewater should be okay. And then a quick look at that 7-day just to show us, again, the double digits hanging on. A bit of a drop Tuesday, but still mild with wet weather. And then spring arrives on Thursday.
All right, so from purple flowers here to purple flowers in Mexico City, residents are already being greeted by some spectacular blooms. Yeah, these are the stunning purple blossoms bursting out of the jacaranda trees in Mexico's capital. Every year, residents eagerly await these flowers to usher in the arrival of spring.
The jacaranda blooms attract birds, bees, butterflies, and even tourists to the city. The tropical tree native to South America was first introduced to Mexico in the 1920s.
Awfully pretty.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great weekend.